Dear listeners and viewers, this one is truly special. Why? Because for a long time I've been trying to find answers in what is truly timeless and what is fleeting. If, for example, happiness is fleeting, should we pursue it at all? If growth is fleeting and it's often coupled with degrowth, what's the point in pursuing it at all? Is there something that's truly timeless? Can conventional wisdom help us find answers to these questions? And if not, where do we find such answers? I'm extremely privileged today to be with S.A. Sreedharanji, who calls himself and was known and loved in the entire world as a new age philosopher. He goes ahead and he and the team propagates teachings of Vedanta, which is an ancient philosophy 7,000 years back that is as relevant as it was in the past. I personally enjoyed every moment of it. We talk a lot about a lot of these aspects on what is timeless, what truly can go ahead and stand the vagaries of time, and really how do we evolve ourselves from who we are to our truest potential that we can be. Chiranji has over countless lectures, 9,000 plus more lectures in fact, and over his entire 3 decades of researching and imbibing the lessons of Vedanta, has a lot to offer to each one of us today. Stay tuned as these conversations unroll. Good morning, Shiraji. It's an absolute honor and it's my privilege to have you here today. Shiraji, you have been researching, studying, and spending more than 2 decades of your life on ancient wisdom about Vedanta. You are a new age philosopher whose primary goal, as you say, is to improve the quality of lives around you. And you have helped a lot of people realize their true potential through the teachings of Vedanta. I'm very curious, Sridharji. First of all, thanks for being here, but I'm very, very curious what led you onto this path? Why Vedanta?
Thank you very much for having me, and wonderful to see the efforts you're putting in sharing relevant knowledge to one and all. So, kudos to your efforts. Continue that journey, which is you never know how it transforms in the future and how it helps. So, continue that effort, and again, thank you for having me. What led me to this journey? There is always this thought there's something more to life, not just your day to day living, not just your indulgences. And there is at a certain age, I would say from the age of 16, 17, you also become aware of how others are living their life. And I was seeing a lot of people who was very successful. I come from a family which is reasonably well off. And I met people who are successful, who are high achievers, but there was a lot of lacuna in their life,
Mm,
something missing in their life. And that almost, it could be a bad relationship, or could be an addiction, or could be emotional issues, or some kind of there's a disconnect, which
mm,
which was evident. And when you ask, I used to be quite inquisitive, so I used to ask them personally, and they said, that's life, that is how it's going to be. And
mm,
it literally shocked me. What if I'm 45, 50, and I have everything and I feel miserable? And so that's when I knew what I didn't want, but I didn't know what I wanted.
mm,
So that search was there. That's what led to reading books, visiting libraries, attending lectures of great masters, exposing myself to classical music. And I mean, I didn't learn anything. I just used to attend. No, don't get me wrong. And that's how it led one after the other. And I attended Swami Parthasarthiji's lectures in Chennai, and that was very thought provoking because suddenly I started finding some direction to my questions. I wouldn't say, I mean, I had clear answers, but there was a
mm.
direction to that thinking, and one led to another, and it's been 28 years, Priyank. So, what a I mean, it's a phenomenal path and the most magnificent journey. I can't imagine my life, if life without Vedanta, without this alignment to spiritual knowledge, it would have been very, very different. So that's one led to another. Now it's 28 years, and it is something which is forever.
Beautiful. So, Shiraji, that is the word that I want to latch on to, that it is something forever. So, this entire podcast that I try to do is about finding timeless wisdom, finding wisdom that is forever. What about Vedanta makes it forever, even in the world that we live today?
See, Vedanta is a Sanskrit word derived from two Sanskrit words, Veda and Anta. Veda means knowledge, Anta means end. So Vedanta literally symbolizes the culmination of wisdom, the end of knowledge. So everyone said in the modern context they say there's no end to knowledge. AI coming in, Chat GPT, you can ask something, some remote information about Greenland, you get it. Or
Yeah.
there is unending. But this is a knowledge pertaining to the individual. And most of the knowledge we have is information which can be temporarily used. It
Mm,
is when we talk about eternal knowledge, it is how do you eternity or reality, how do you define that which existed in the past or that which is relevant in the past,
mm,
that which is relevant and pertinent in the present, and
mm,
which continues to be relevant, useful in the future. That
mm.
is eternal knowledge. The CDs, audio CDs were there. No, the audio tapes, then audio CDs, then I don't know DVDs. Now it is all in the cloud.
Yeah.
I don't know what in the future. When the cloud goes and then they may say even rain, the rain seeding or whatever. So Vedanta or one aspect of our life is aligned with eternity. So
Mm,
that eternity, that knowledge pertaining to eternity, reality is that which exists, supports all periods of time. It was very relevant in the past, it is relevant now, it is very crucial in the future. That knowledge is what spirituality is all about. That knowledge is what Vedanta speaks. That any scripture, any great master, their accent was on the reality, the eternity. There is an eternal self, there is a acquired self. We keep changing. You look at your photograph 20 years ago.
mm.
Now you're changing. But there is that energy which is there from that time now till the time you're there. So Vedanta deals with that. So it gives you a sense of objectivity in living life.
If you have to expand that a little more, Shidharji, and if I need a liberty to ask you this piece, uh, for someone who is about to tread on a similar path, or for someone who wants to discover more, does he have to let go of everything? Does he have this common perspective saying that no, if you follow this path, you follow this after 45, have achieved everything in
Right.
life, then it makes sense to go ahead and do this. How is it relevant, or is it even relevant?
Good question. Why not many people take up to the path of eternity or reality or Vedanta is because the enormous fear that I have to let go of many things. Oh my God, then I can't go for a Saturday night party. I can't be a social scotch consumer. The fear of giving up, they let go of the spiritual path. The
Yeah.
fear of giving up. And let me break this truth. Nobody can give up anything. If you give up anything by force, you will take up to the same thing with much more force later. It is like some people go for a 21-day cleansing, body cleansing. They will not have this, they will not have that. They avoid many things. On the 22nd day, you have to see with full vengeance. Even before they would have had vadappa once in a month. Now, next 3 days, I'll have that. No, no, no. No, I'm just saying, you can't. What I'm trying to say jocularly is, you can't give up. If you give up anything forcefully, you will take up to it much more later on because you're frustrating yourself. You're denying yourself. So that interest multiplies. But what we are saying in this path, forget even spirituality, any kind of a self evolution requires that you take up to something higher. You take up to something higher. As a result, the lower falls away by itself. A simple thing, you want to wake up early. A person these days, youngsters, 3 a.m. they are awake. There's some fellows. You wanna, it's one is I don't want to sleep late. I don't want to sleep late. No, you gonna fight it. But when you start having what they call a rasa, a flavor of getting up early,
mm,
the
mm,
sunrise, going for reading a book, or sitting in silence, or going for a walk. When you have a taste of it and you start liking it, when I say like in a good way,
mm,
you're going for you're reading for take up a book, you read for 15 minutes, you think about it, then you do yoga, you start liking it, and
mm,
you see the impact it has on your quality of life. Then, instead of 5 nights sleeping late, you will start sleeping late 2 nights a week. You're not giving up anything, you're taken up to something higher.
mm,
Therefore, that helps you to, it's like it is when you have very poor quality of friends, but
mm,
when you keep raising yourself in the value systems,
mm,
you'll slowly find the lower quality of friends dropping off by themselves. It's not that you don't deal with them, you have grown up. It's not that you're arrogant, they don't find any more interest in you.
mm,
So the fact or the truth is, you can't give up anything. If you give up anything, number two, if you give up anything forcefully, you take up to it with much more vengeance. Number three, which is a crucial aspect, you can only get inspired, take up to something higher.
mm.
And the more and more you get inspired and taking up to something higher, the lower falls away by itself. So there's no giving up. It's like a when petals turn into fruit, the petals fall away by itself. By itself, it falls away. So in that way, don't force yourself to give up anything. You only have to take up to something higher. And the more and more you take up to something higher, you've almost forgotten about the lower. Just you're not feeding it. It goes away. Waking up early becomes a discipline for you. I mean, a way of life for you. Therefore, once in a week, a couple of times, you may go out, party with friends. 5 days a week, you want to wake up early, read, contemplate, do yoga, all those things, because that gives you a higher quality of joy compared to the instant pleasure which indulgence gives.
Shitarji, taking an offshoot from this question or from this topic, I was just wondering for in your personal life and the lives that you and Vedanta has touched from that extension or teachings of Vedanta have touched. When one follows the path, you said that there are choices that we make, there are trade-offs that are there, and the lower self then goes away and ebbs away by it takes its own path like that. By doing that, does one at some point in time become a social pariah? Does one feel isolated and lonely? Does one feel that, like how you said, that okay, because if I have risen myself to that level, I'm not being able to connect with my colleagues from office, with the same group of people that I used to go out before. Does detachment make you lonely?
See, it's the other way around. It is because you are a little more objective, a little
Mm,
more calm, or not dependent on many aspects. You can relate with many people in a much better way. It's not that you become a recluse, the American connotation of the word introvert. It means somewhere
mm,
you are by yourself. That's a wrong approach. It is. You start genuinely cherishing the friendship of one and all. It is because you're not dependent on them, nor are you concerned about their views. You're not indifferent. You are genuinely friendly. You are experiencing what they call as the sense of self-sufficiency. Therefore, when the people are there, you are very much a part of the group. When they are not there, you are okay. You can deal with yourself very well.
mm,
So it is not that we become socially incapable of dealing with it,
mm,
dealing with people. Initially, there's a friction. Once you're in this journey of self enrichment, self evolution, you will always find you are able to associate with the goodness in one and all. So they, you're not like a socially recluse or a pariah where I don't like them. I prefer quietness. I can't deal. It is not that. In fact, you may sometimes that kind of an interaction. You may not be well versed in politics or
Mm,
certain. Talking with them, you will get some inputs.
mm,
So nothing is. Uh, I mean, you don't become a recluse or a person who's by themselves, who can't interact with the world. But other way around, you become far more social, and at the same time, you are not dependent on social gatherings. If it is there, you are fine. If it is
mm,
not there, see what happened to people during the COVID time.
mm,
They were petrified because they couldn't meet anybody.
mm,
The only person they were meeting was their spouses. Therefore, the divorces multiplied. So it is it become far more social in the right ways. In fact, those who are too extroverted are actually antisocial. They can only relate to one set of people. They can't. No, it is that I call as antisocial. If you can relate with one and all, you may maintain a distance, but you can relate with one and all, which means there's a large sense of self-sufficiency and acceptance. So the other way around, because we don't find many people like that. We think that, oh my God, it's going to be a very boring life. The other way around, the people you associate with people, you associate with music, you associate with arts, you associate with poetry, you associate with nature, you associate with children, you associate with elders. Your gamut of social interaction becomes way wider.
mm.
So it's not that we are talking only about people. You can relate with one and all.
Wow. Shiraji, in the field of management theory, one of the popular theory is what they call it as Dunning-Kruger effect, which means essentially a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. But so when people go ahead and try to build or try to gain some level of competence, they become overconfident, and it's really widely seen as a problem as well. And people make a lot of mistakes. They become very arrogant when they know something like that. So, in Vedanta, or in spirituality in general, when one starts acquiring knowledge and one starts, like you said, having a taste of that higher platform, how does one stop being arrogant? How and then move towards being humble?
See, the notion of arrogance itself highlights a sense of ignorance. Anyone who is genuinely knowledgeable, in this case wise, the natural effect is humility. Natural effect. A great example is Abdul Kalam, person of extreme scientific prowess. You find him so humble. Yeah, I think it was Einstein who made a statement. What is my knowledge compared to my vast ignorance? A person of that caliber talks that way. It's only those fellows who have gained, as you mentioned, little bit of information, and then they become egoistic. It is intelligence and ego will go together. Intelligence is pertaining to a particular field of activity. You have used your intellect to gain that intelligence, an excellent surgeon or a accountant.
Mm,
But if you have a sharp intellect, you become acutely aware of so many aspects of life. And the natural effect of it is humility.
mm,
Natural effect is humility. So ego and humility can never go together. I keep highlighting there's an expansion for the word ego,
mm,
ego. Many people very wrongly suggest edging God out. That's a very
mm,
poor thing, I guess. The exact ego is exaggerated glorification of oneself. So people with little bit knowledge, it's not even knowledge, it's information, and they want to what do you call show off that information. That's where the problem happens. But a person who uses the intellect, gathers the information, and they know their areas of knowledge, they know the areas of ignorance. One way of observing is you should know what you know, you should know what you do not know, And the third aspect, you should know what you will never know. If you that what you what if all that you know is what you know, you will become egoistic. You will misuse it or you'll abuse it. But if you become aware of what you don't know and what you will never know, why two eyes? There can be some four eyes, right? Why only two hands? If I had another one more extra hand, would have been better. There are certain things you will never know. Never know. The earth is moving at a beautiful speed. So meticulously it is moving. We can give all the gravitational force and all that. But how does it function? Just to, you're in one place, I'm in another place. Technology is enabling the whole in a conversation.
Mm,
We can say that there are cables put and all that.
mm,
It is a little more just to register a site. Here is Priyanshu. And even before a conversation, they say it's a million operation takes place in the retina. Now you work for a healthcare company.
mm,
A million, even before a conversation, just to observe, to see a million operation takes place in the retina. Can you imagine?
yeah.
So it is wherever there is wisdom, there is humility. Wherever there is a lack of humility, it is just information arrogated to oneself.
Beautiful. Shiraji, this is a very, I think, nice way to segue into the next piece, which is difference between intelligence and intellect. And I've heard you often say this. I've heard a few research scholars also say that there's a difference between intelligence and intellect. For someone who is a layman who has not understood this better, who wants to understand this better, how would you explain with an example, if possible?
See, again, very pertinent learning for especially youngsters. Intelligence in the Vedantic context is pertaining to a particular field of activity. As I mentioned, you use your intellect, gross intellect, in a particular subject, accountancy, medicine, civil engineering, or all that. So what happens? You get proficient because you've put in effort. You have done your thinking. You've been with it for a while. So you become proficient in that particular field of activity,
Mm,
which is intelligence. If you ask me, that is essential. You need it because if you want to enhance your standard of living, you need intelligence. But that alone is not enough. You have seen many in the world, especially in the business sector or even corporate field, many people are one role wonders. They're very successful in business or profession, but they are miserable in other roles. So intellect is gained through independent thinking, alignment with higher values, taking the guidance of spiritual masters or scriptures, being in sync with your conscience and conviction, and being a student of life. You keep learning about life all the time. So that develops your intellect. So there's values, and you understand you are able to prioritize yourself well. You understand work is important, but you also understand being the family is also equally even more important. Health is essential. I keep highlighting a healthy body, joyful work, reasonable material wealth, a home full of concern, affection, compassion, good sleep, progressive relationships. You can't own it. You can't buy it. You have to deserve it. You have to work towards it. You can't buy it. You have to deserve it. So, intellect helps you to prioritize, deal with it well, and as a result, this beautiful combination of intelligence and a strong intellect eventually manifest as a very good standard of living and a much more or a much higher quality of standard quality of living. I repeat, this intelligence helps you in developing your standard of living.
mm,
A strong intellect helps you to experience quality of living. You need standard and quality. There is no point. It is. I'm very much okay with a one bedroom or a studio apartment. You can have a palatial house and have a great quality of living. What's the point in having a 12-bedroom villa and nobody wants to stay with you? You need that combination. So, intelligence is important. That is in one field of activity. A strong intellect is essential because you have so many other roles in life. Otherwise, you will use the success in one role and neglect your responsibilities in other roles. So, this is where spirituality, Vedanta, self evolution, self enrichment plays a vital role. It understands the importance of intelligence, but it also helps you to align the most important effort, which is a strong intellect.
This is really nice because one of the things that Shiraji, you mentioned that one can go ahead and develop a stronger intellect by one of the ways would be to aligning oneself with higher set of values and higher set of conscience. So how does one develop or one discover values? Because today in the world of management they all talk about leadership is about leading with values first. You cannot be a know-it-all. You have to find answers because most of the questions even you have no answers. Post the COVID world and AI world, you have no answers, so you can only be a seeker then be a knower. So how does one go ahead and find one's values?
See, values are whatever resonates with you at that point of time. In simple terms, greater the value keeps enhancing when you move from selfishness to unselfishness.
Wow.
A leader by design has to be selfless, meaning you move from unselfishness to selflessness. The selflessness means there is an absence of that little self, which is the ego. Which is the ego. It is a, so that selflessness is, and once then what happens? You're not thinking. Selfishness is what I, me, and myself. Unselfishness, I'm able to accommodate others' interests, including myself. Selflessness is it is just the cause, which encapsulates everyone, everything. So first value is you move from selfishness to unselfishness. In the American management term, they say it's good to be selfish. It's
Yeah.
good to be stressed. Selfish meaning, see, what they may highlight is you're fully immersed in it. See, there's sometimes it's all marketing, right? The way you talk. If I'm selfish and somebody say, "Oh, it's good to be selfish," then I resonate with it. Oh, I like it. But the real fact is, if it's me, mine, and myself, I can't survive beyond a point. I mean, I can't handle myself beyond a point. I'll start hating myself. So all these stress is good. Stress is good. There's, what they say is you're fully focused on your work. So no, okay, then no, the stress I go through is not that bad. Huh? It's a, I wouldn't say marketing gimmick, but you're spoon feeding in a certain way. It is, but in Vedanta, in our scriptural studies, they say you get what you deserve, not what you desire. You may desire many things, but you will get what you deserve. You're too, what do you call, why can't he be nice? Spiritual people should be very soft, right? Why are you being so harsh?
Hmm.
I mean, the truth is, there's no emotions to truth. It's a mathematical equation. Is there any emotion to it? A plus B the whole, and you take any equation, E is equal to MC square. Where is the emotion in it? So, it is, all that we are saying is, it's not that it's devoid of emotion, but the values keeps escalating with every at every stage of your life. The values you had when you are 15, 20 years will be different from what you have now, and it will be different from 5 years from now. But there are certain values, the quality of values enhancing, it keeps enhancing. That is one line. Another is from you're moving from selfishness to unselfishness and to selflessness. It's like two parallel lines. So the more you enhance yourself, the greater is your values. There are various statements. A value is a value only when you value it. If there are people, they can use the four-letter words in any kind of a conversation.
Hmm.
But if you have a value for refined speech,
Hmm.
you will not use it. The value has a value only when you value it. So, therefore, it is a leader by design is one who first is moving from unselfishness to selflessness.
Hmm.
Number two, a leader is one who understands it is not just a position, but it is a massive responsibility. And number three, a leader is one who wants to lead by example, not by showing the way. A leader who says, "Look here, They are working. It's not that they are working very hard, or it is not only that they lead by example, not just they lead the way, not just show the way. This is how it has to be done. They lead by example, and at times they don't advise or they don't sermonize all the time. Once in a way, they highlight certain things. They lead the way. When you lead the way, I don't know, if you have a team which is inspired by the values, they take up to it. A classic example is Ratan Tata.
mm,
He was an entrepreneur,
mm,
but when he passed away, the kind of identification people had with him,
mm,
a person who led the way. Can you imagine Tata Sons giving 60% of their profits for charitable causes, social
mm,
causes?
mm,
It is. It's not that for me, I want a palatial house. He was taking a small, a regular bedroom, two-bedroom apartment or whatever, and unselfishness to selflessness. They're very much in the business environment, but they were leading the way, not making. I mean, they're setting an example, and not keep telling, "Look here, I'm giving this, so you also give." No such. In the West, they were doing that, right? I'm doing it, so you also know. Look here, it is like they were doing it, and they kept doing it. That's all I would say. So, leading the way, not merely sermonizing, leading the way. So we have enough and more why to look at the West,
mm,
Priyanshu. There are enough and more great examples in India. I studied in a college called Vivekananda College in Chennai. The entire property was gifted by two Chettiar families. Can you imagine? It is at the time, I'm talking about 25 years ago. It was it was maybe $20 for a semester. $20 for a semester, and those entrepreneurs could have thought, no, look here, such a large, vast acreage of land. Maybe my grandchildren, great grandchildren may need it. Why should I give? But they gave for education. Education. Yeah, it is. So there were socially conscious entrepreneurs,
mm,
business people. Those who are you know, very selfish, self-centered, meaning they themselves. Eventually, they suffer. The organization suffers. But socially conscious. I'm not talking about charity here.
mm,
No, you do your product well.
mm,
You protect yourself in proper ways. Those are the great examples. We have enough and more terrible warnings in the business field.
I'm sure you would have you would have been asked this question multiple times, Shiranji, but I just wanted to pick this again with you. The new age managers and new age leaders, one of the common problems and challenges, rather, I would say it this way, is in overcoming anxiety. We have seen the highest rate of depression, highest rate of suicide, highest rate of self harm, highest rate of burnout, especially in healthcare as well. And the world's grappling with a lot of these challenges. And it's become like a norm right now that people are scared to become leaders and managers leading large teams because the consequence of that comes with ill health and anxiety and depression and burnout. So, how does one, maybe your mantra of not being anxious, not being stressed out or burnt out, is there a mantra at all?
I wish there was a very simple mantra and we chant that mantra, all that is sorted out. But no such mantras. I mean, there are great mantras to chant and get inspired. But yesterday I had a lecture, Wisdom for All Ages.
Hmm.
Same question came up. And let me tell you, this is a perennial or eternal question. You're asking now, 20 years hence, and someone else will ask, 200 years hence, someone it's going to be, it's a human predicament. See, anyone, that's why this is the classic example of a lot of intelligence and no intellect. Intelligence is there in the field of activity, but other roles, it's all predominantly the mind and ego. And the number one inability to deal with the pressures and other roles affects the productivity in the work life. Along with that, anxiety. Then the natural impact of functioning on the mind is The mind will be anxious about the future, will be worried about the past, will be excited in the present. That
Mm.
is the nature of the mind. Anyone functioning on the mind will become anxious.
Mm.
You see it in sports. Some great players are too anxious. Will I score? Will I? It's not that I'll score a double. I mean, I'll score a hundred. Will I get into double digits? Almost. It is. I don't want to mention the names. There are great players.
Mm.
Six, seven, or two. I mean, anxious. At least this innings, then I need to play for at least 5 hours or
Mm.
10 hours, and suddenly one nick, you go and then it's caught again. So anxiety is a natural phenomenon of the mind.
Mm.
If you are using the mind, it will be anxious. So what is the solution? Start using or strengthening your intellect. Strengthening your intellect. Then it's mind is a child, intellect is adult.
Mm.
You have a beautiful villa or a fabulous apartment facing the ocean, and it is left to the care of a 3-year-old child. You have gone on a holiday and now you come back after 4 days, and how will the apartment be?
Mm.
Spick and span or messy?
Messy.
And so you tell the child, why can't you had your cereal and milk? Why can't you just put it in the sink?
Mm.
Why do you do everywhere there is milk spilled? Or that's the nature of a child. Similarly, the nature of the mind is to become anxious. The more and more you use the intellect, greater is your potential in supervising the mind, and as a result, you don't fall into depression.
Mm.
The Bhagavad Gita equates the mind to a flow of water in a river,
Mm.
and the intellect to the banks of a river. If the banks of the river are strong, the water can be used for various purposes. If the banks of the river are weak, what happens? It overflows, it inundates the fields, it creates havoc.
Mm.
Similarly, when the mind is strong, intellect is weak. The mind is overpowering and intellect is not strong enough to deal with the vagaries of the mind.
Mm.
It will lead to anxiety, and sustained anxiety will lead to depression, and sustained depression will lead to the destruction of the personality.
Shiraji, if you don't mind, could you repeat that once again for the viewers? That was so powerful.
Came in the flow, Priyanshu. It is the mind, the Bhagavad Gita equates the mind to a flow of water in a river, intellect to the banks supporting the river. When the when the banks of the river are strong, the water can be used for various purposes. If the banks are weak, it overflows, it inundates anything and it
Wow.
destroys. Similarly, when the mind is powerful, intellect is weak. The mind is overpowering and intellect is not strong enough to deal with the vagaries of the mind. It leads to anxiety.
Mm.
The mind, the nature, it leads to anxiety, and sustained anxiety leads to depression,
Yep.
because you are processing it again and again and again and again. It leads to depression. What depression is? What it is, even in the sky, the depression means what depression is formed. After that, what there'll be a downpour.
Yeah.
It's like that. Depression, then there'll be an emotional drama after depression, and sustained depression and emotional drama leads to a destruction of a personality. What do you call this? Self-inflicting exits, which is suicides,
Yeah.
or all that. All that stems from the overpowering mind and disempowered intellect. So the whole process is, that's why the Vedanta highlights, you make yourself, you mar yourself.
Mm.
You are the architect of your fortune. You are the architect of your misfortune. Don't blame anybody. And the Gita goes one step further. It says, you could be your best friend or the worst enemy. The choice is yours. Whether you want to be the best friend to yourself by aligning yourself with values, strengthening your intellect, having progressive relationship, you're unselfish, moving towards selflessness. Or you could be, that's when you're becoming your best friend. You could be your best friend or your worst enemy. You feed your mind. It leads to anxiety. It leads to worries. And then leads to depression. You sustain depression, and that leads to destroying yourself. The mind will not stop until it destroys itself.
I think that was really, really profound, Shiraji. And to something that I have been, let's say, very interested and fascinated in recently, because you mentioned about the Bhagavad Gita. So for me, the Bhagavad Gita, more than a sacred text, is like a spiritual guide with timeless wisdom. If there is something or some elements about the Bhagavad Gita, Shiraji, that you feel are still relevant to a budding manager or leader, or some terrible warnings or that we should pay heed to, or let's say a code of conduct that we should adhere to, anything that stands out as your favorite go-to elements.
See, there are so many favorites for me in the Bhagavad Gita. So many. But for a general viewers, the Bhagavad Gita defines true happiness and false happiness. True and false happiness. It's there in the chapter 18, I think verse 37, 38. It says true happiness is like poison in the beginning, but nectar in the end. And false happiness is nectar in the beginning, poison in the end. Beautifully highlighted. False happiness is nectar in the beginning. So beautiful, partying, indulging, spending money beyond your limits. So enticing. It's a nectar in the beginning, but poison in the end. False happiness. They say why it's false happiness? There was happiness. You can't say there's no happiness. There's only, if only five times 5 nights a week you are partying. What a life. Or living beyond your means. They say the best. No one is impressed with your possessions as much as you are. So true happiness is like poison in the beginning. Like it is unpleasant, as you mentioned, getting up early, doing your study, going for a walk, learning a new skill. Where they say poison, it's unpleasant in the beginning. True happiness is like poison in the beginning, but nectar in the end. If not, see, it's there in the Gita. Even if you don't have spiritual inclination, forget. At least become aware of what you are all seeking happiness, right?
Hmm.
Why can't you at least pursue the real true happiness? What all that people are pursuing is false happiness. That's the reason nobody is really happy.
Hmm.
Somebody tell and ask, how are you? If you say on top of the world, really? In fact, many people when they ask you a question, they don't expect an answer. How are you? What's happening? If you say stuff, I'm seriously on top of the world. I love my life, man. I enjoy this life. They think this guy is mad. How can you? It's like that. Who says that? It is so number one. Number two is happiness is a state of mind. It's not in the objects or beings. Happiness, what Vedanta, what we as mind and intellect as an institution, we highlight is you should be happy not because of something. You should be happy in spite of everything. So that's what in our sessions and everything, you're happy not because something is happening. You're happy in spite of everything that is happening. You're peaceful in spite of everything happening. That's our assurance. That's what alignment with mind and intellect, our weekly lectures helps a person. I can think, and it's not that when something negative happening or jumping it, no. You're peaceful, you're calm, you're dealing with it gracefully.
Shiraji, there's so much that I personally took away. I've been waiting for this to happen, this session with you to happen. There's so much that I learned today, and I'm sure everyone who's been watching this, who would be listening to this, would learn. My favorite were the difference between true happiness and false happiness, and why I mean, there's been so many studies on happiness being fleeting thing and all of that. But I think this is such a beautiful definition of happiness. Another favorite of mine is that the mind will not stop at anything to destroy itself. So hence, when you compare the mind with the with a 3 year child and an intellect as something that needs to control the mind and not the other way around, and the difference between intellect and intelligence, I think that's always been my favorite every time I've heard you say that. And of course, third is that value is something that you have to first value. That's such a beautiful line. I'll keep quoting that. I'll keep quoting you, in fact, for that. That at the end of the day, when you discover your values, when you walk from the path of unselfishness to selflessness and the beautiful expansion, your expansion of the word ego. So I think these are amazing, amazing tenets to imbibe, to live gracefully in the world that we live today. Your parting words to any budding manager or leader who is trying to create an impact in the world we live today. Your final words of wisdom for now.
Words of wisdom. See, there's so much I can say, but they say I would highlight to thine own self be true. Be
Wow.
true to yourself. It is be true to yourself in thought, word, and action. That is when you lead a life of value and impact. Be true to yourself in thought, in words, and action. And let the thoughts, words, and action get aligned. What you think is what you say, and what you say is what you do. Be true to yourself. It's an alignment which will give you a lot of peace. Being true to yourself. Most of us are false to ourselves. In fact, most of us are fooling ourselves. You think you're fooling others, you're actually fooling yourself. So be true to yourself. And you see, the impact may not be in the short term, it's long term impact it is. So managers, you could be managing a small team or a big team. You are managing. Eventually, you got to manage yourself.
Mm,
When you manage yourself, when you're true to yourself, it appears difficult. Is it practical for all managers? Initially, it is difficult. Can you be true to yourself? To find and communicate in certain ways, which is pleasant, but be true to yourself. Otherwise, you're you will not know what you're doing. So you've got to be careful. The Shakespeare puts it beautifully: "To thine own self be true. It must follow as night the day thou canst not then be false to any man." In the play Hamlet, Polonius advised to Leartus. It says, "This above all, the father is advising the son." It's a set of suggestions towards this above all, to thine own self be true. It must follow as night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. It's how night follows the day.
mm,
Similarly, be true to yourself. A strong conviction and a clear conscience. You function with a strong conviction and a clear conscience. Then you will not be false to anybody and to yourself. That's my message for today to all of those who are listening.
wow. Thank you so much, Hiroji. It's been an absolute pleasure. And honestly, it's again a huge privilege listening to you today. Thank you so much for saying yes to this.
Thank you, Priyangshu, and appreciate the opportunity. And we genuinely want to create a community, a society of happy managers, joyful parents, progressive citizens.
Thank you. Thank you, Hiroji.
Thank you. Thank you.